Hey everybody, tonight we're doing something a little different. I'm going to get away from little profiles of games for a bit, and we're going to do a top 10 list. I thought about doing a top 10 games of all time, but I'm not one to do those because mine don't change. If I think a game is the best game until something dethrones it, I'm not going to change it. So my favorite games don't really change much from year to year. So I thought we'd do something a little different. We're going to do the top 10 things that annoy us most in gaming. We find a lot of things that they kind of bug us a little bit about games or the way that they make games, and we thought we'd do some of those. So you want to go first, or?
I'll go first. I didn't have a lot of items for this list. So my first three actually have to do with the packaging and the boxing for board games. The first one is when you unbox the game and you can't fit all the components back in the game. I think is poor planning on their part, because they should have taken that into account when deciding what box size to use. And I have heard that some companies use the same box for multiple games to save money instead of getting a box for each of the games that they have and optimizing the size. But I don't know, I think they should.
So one size does not fit all.
It's true.
All right, my number 10 is actually apropos to what we just did. First player markers and picking the first player. I don't think every game needs to have a first player marker. I don't mind it if it's involved in the game. You're playing a game, and part of it is you have a market, and maybe the first player market goes out to a specific thing on the market, and if you buy that, you also get to be the first player next time. It's a little strategic. But I played an awful lot of two-player trick-taking games. If I can't remember who goes first this turn, I probably shouldn't be playing something like that. I should be watching television. But I don't even mind. I know a lot of people don't like the collectible types, the great big giant things you put in the game that makes a game cost more. But I don't mind it if it's pretty cool. I like collecting neat things, so I don't mind that too much. But I can understand the cost going up just for a first player marker. It's a little silly, but kind of neat to collect them. But that's mine.
Yep. My number 9, inside the box, inserts that are not designed well for organizing components easily, which is a little different than them not fitting in the box and not being able to close the box. So I think it's highly annoying when they give you an insert, or they give you inserts, but it doesn't organize anything. Like, it just gives you one central location where everything just goes. So it doesn't let you separate different types of tokens or different types of components. I think that's a missed opportunity. They could have designed it in such a way that it would actually help you organize your game. So not only can you fit the box cover back on, but you also fit all the components in nicely, and you can keep them organized for when you take out the game or when you put it back when you're done. So,
all right, number 9 for me is games with print and play quality graphics, components that cost as much as a much better game that's very similar. I know that cost goes into a lot of it, especially you see it on Kickstarter. It can drive the price up of games, but if you have a $15 game that actually looks like a $5 game, and the other $15 or $20 games are like far superior, there's no reason why you can't. Print and play, or if you're doing a Kickstarter by yourself, I understand you're kind of cutting costs on it. It can be expensive. You don't have the backing to do that. But I see game companies do it all the time, where it looks like a $15 game, but it costs $40, and then the $40 games that are basically the same game look way better. And I don't really think today's technology that you got to be at least close. But that's something that kind of kills me, because that takes away from some of the game, and it makes it not quite so enjoyable for me. But that's my number 9.
My number 8, the size of the box not fitting the game in that it's too big. And again, I think that goes with a company using the same box they made for one game for future games to save money, because they have the boxes already. But I think that if a game is really, really big, especially for me where I don't have a lot of space to store games, if I could use that extra space to store 2 or 3 more games, I'd rather have the box fit the game in that the game is small, so have the box be small to fit the game, and then the extra space that it would have used up, I could have put more games on on my shelf. So that's just really annoying to have a box that's way too big for what's inside it.
It's funny you should say that. My number 8 is small games that should be bigger and big games that should be smaller. There are games that I get quite a bit that they're like this little game and they want to fit in a mint tin, but it just doesn't. It really doesn't play that way. There are a few that have like 2 or 3 pieces and slide them around like they're not dexterity games, but what do you call them? Like chess.
Like a little abstract.
Right, abstracts. That makes sense. You don't have a lot of components and then you put it in a little box. But they'll make this little game and it just doesn't really have much life because there's not much to it. And then they'll have great big giant games that really don't do very much. So mine's kind of the same in a way. I like to see them. I love it when a designer or a game company makes a game that is just right. It's exactly what it is. It's the right size. It's not too clunky, so you got to carry it. Like I love the Batman game. I backed it on Kickstarter, but it's huge. It's huge and it's
like 8
heavy.
boxes.
And I brought it over here one night, and I had a hard time carrying it all in. It made like 2 trips because it's very bulky, and that you don't have to bring everything obviously, and you can package things differently. But it's an awful lot of work for what it is, and because that's Kickstarter, so that's going to be a little bit bigger. But that's my number 8.
Yep. Number 7. Similar games with inconsistent rules. An example being different hand limits. So what I mean by that is 2 games that are very similar in how they play and what the goal of the game is, but they have different hand limits. They have different, you draw your card at the beginning of the turn or the end of the turn, or it just, when you play a lot of games, it's hard to, you basically have to relearn every game before you play it because you can never remember what's the hand limit in this game, what's the, how many points it plays to, and sometimes I know like hand limits especially, it's balancing. So in that particular game, they can't do the generic 5 or 7 because it doesn't fit that gameplay. So there's going to be times where they have to be different, but like all deck builders should just be 10 cards. Or 10 card starting deck, 5 card draw. That way it's just consistent. And if, I feel like it's just annoying, and sometimes when they have to do it, but it's just annoying to have to keep relearning or keep looking at rule books every time you have to play very similar games when they could just be mainstream across the board with some aspects of it.
Or when they call something different, like your discard pile is
the graveyard, or it's the trash pile, or it's the
kumbaya, or the dilly walk, or something.
It's that is annoying.
All right, my number 7 is poor use of special abilities. As an older gamer, I like leveling up. Okay, because I played a lot of D&D when I was younger in war games, and you can level up your troops or your tanks or whatever you have. But you start out with very basic skills. When I don't mind if they do them the right way. If a special ability, especially in a civilization building game where it makes sense, like a country has a naval advantage because like England or something like that. That's thematic to the history of what it is. But these abstract, just kind of arbitrary special abilities just give somebody an advantage in a certain way. They're not necessarily overpowering. I run into too much of that, but I don't know. It just feels, like I said, arbitrary. You just kind of threw it in. It's like, okay, you got an advantage. You're going to get 5 more cards just because you do.
Because you're the cleric.
Exactly. I don't mind, again, if it's, like the archer has long, you can shoot them further away or something.
Starts with like a higher stat.
That makes sense.
Range or something.
But a lot of them are just, really, you're not really picking the character you want. You're actually picking the ability you want. And then you happen to be that character. And it doesn't seem to mesh. And I don't really like that too much. So that's my number 7.
All right. My number 6, when people put theme before gameplay and consider themeless to be a negative thing. And what I mean by that is, I know theme is important in especially bigger, heavier games, they tell a story that you're being immersed. Your gameplay fits what the theme is trying to portray. I get that, but I feel like I've watched a lot of video because YouTube's where I learn about a lot of board games, and a lot of reviewers, even if they still say they like the game, they always knock games that are themeless when they have like a pasted on quote unquote theme, like it's a negative thing, and that it's a negative that the gameplay didn't bring out that theme. And I feel like a lot of them that I see that I'm thinking about, they're smaller games where I don't think that you really need to have the theme come through. Like, I think the pictures and the theme that they pasted on, again, quote unquote, is just to give it some character and just to give it something to look at. But I think it's a small game, 20-30 minute game. It's not trying to be a storytelling game. It's not trying to like lead you along for hours. It's just something to have fun with. So I don't know that it has to be a negative. It's just something, my personal preference, my own personal opinion. I have a lot of games that could be any theme, but it doesn't make it less fun for me, because I enjoy what they did paste on, and I just have fun with the gameplay. And I get disappointed if there isn't theme in something that takes me 2 hours to play, but in something that takes 20-30 minutes, I don't usually care if feels themeless.
All right, my number 6 is overpowered abilities in action cards. If you're going to have an ability, at least make it make sense. Or if you're going to have action cards, but just all of a sudden somebody just blows up the whole world with one card. Or their ability is so strong that that's the one everybody wants to play, because you're going to have a huge advantage to start the game on every turn. And it just doesn't seem to fit. It seems awkward whenever I play something like that. And I don't run into it too much, but when I do, when I start looking at the abilities or hear about some of the action cards, and it's like, oh, here we go. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, I actually agree. I even, having played Magic for a lot of years, there's definitely a lot of cards in that game where it's like destroy all creatures, just nuke the board. And I was okay with it in that game, but I think in some of these hobby games, when you put them in, they're out of place. Like in a game like Magic the Gathering, they kind of design the game so that you can work around that. But some of these games where it's just you play for 15-20 minutes, all of a sudden someone does that, you can't really come back from it very well, and I think it does ruin the experience because it just doesn't fit the game that it's in. It's too random, and it's too oh, I happen to draw that, or I happen to be able to buy that on my turn and you couldn't, so now when I draw it I have a huge advantage just because it says I do.
That would be like the war game scenario I gave before. England has a naval advantage, which would make sense, but they also get like 35 battleships. And then since you're the French, all you have are foot soldiers, and you only have 10. It just I haven't seen it a lot, but I've seen it enough so that it kind of sticks on my craw a little. I don't really care for that, but so that's my number 6.
My number 5, a game is released and then expansion content is released that feels like it completes or fixes the base game. I haven't really run into this with my games I've bought, but I've watched a lot of games that I've just seen it in the gaming community where games will get put out and I watched a review for the expansion and they explain how it fixes problems from the game that they should have caught in when they were playtesting, or the game itself was kind of shallow and now it's like, okay, you have to buy the expansion with the base game because without it the base game is not that great. But this is it basically feels like this should have been in the base game, but now you have to buy both. Just kind of weird. I don't know if they really plan it or if they just, I feel like they plan it. I feel like almost like like Call of Duty, they make all the maps and then they just release half of them with the game and then expect you to pay for it. So it's just, I don't mind expansions, but I'm specifically talking about expansions that feel like that really should have been in the base game. Like, why am I paying more for it later?
Absolutely. My number 5 is actually an industry kind of thing more so than games themselves, but it's game stores that don't understand how retail business works. We don't have a lot of game stores around here to go to. We don't live in a highly populated area, and the ones that we go to, because of the fact that this is not a New York City or something, is small area, small town communities, they struggle to do sales. Everything around here is mostly Magic, motivated like the rest, but they'll have board games in there, and they are at manufacturers suggested manufacturers suggest MSRP and I can't even say it tonight. They'll have it at the real retail price, and you can buy it online cheaper at regular price, and they never have sales. I would love to support you, but I'm not gonna pay $20 more retail for the game from you if I can get it next day for $20 less at regular retail and maybe $40 less on sale. But they never have sales. All you need is 10%. Any kind of a thing. That's how you do it. I worked in retail for a long time, and you have a sale, people come in and they will buy it. You're making whatever your profit margin is, 10% or 15% or 20%. It's not going to kill it. You need to have a sale of some sort, promote it somehow, have a points program where you get just so much per purchase. I have some on like Cool Stuff in Miniature Market, and I don't get a whole lot. You buy a lot of games, and you don't really get a whole lot per game, but it adds up a little bit. It's no more than a few dollars, but at least you're getting something out of it. Every once in a while, it'll save you a little bit on the game. Have a sale once in a while. You have to learn how that works. I know that Magic is the driving factor for your business, but if you're going to sell games, you have to. If you're going to sell any product, you have to learn that you got to give the customers a reason to shop there. And as long as you're competitive, I'll always support you. If I look it up and I see that it's the same price or just a little bit less online, I'll still buy it from you. I will support you all I can, but I'm not paying twice as much for it. You're getting me as halfway a little bit somehow, but
That's true.
that's it.
Number 4, lack of advertising and easy accessibility to product info. So what I mean by this is video games, movies, they have trailers, they advertise their product. They have very public release dates, so it's very easy to know when stuff's coming out a ways ahead of time. And I feel like board games is the one thing I purchase that it's really difficult, other than chasing. I always feel like I'm chasing around. I have like 5 or 6 different channels that I basically have to look at every single day or every a couple times a week or something, because that's the third party people on YouTube that are in the industry are the only way you find out about anything. It's not like, Renegade Games has a channel and they're just putting up, oh, these are all our games we have, all the games coming out, here's what it looks like, here's how it plays. Once in a while they do, but it just feels like I'm having to like hunt and do so much effort to actually find out what is out there and what is coming out, and a lot of stuff gets released at like the big conventions, and it feels like there's no information about anything until like a month before it comes out, it feels like. And I may just not know where to go, but I just haven't found it yet.
No, I don't see a lot of it either. In fact, they're missing the great opportunity. I do see them on occasion. A game company will have almost a trailer for their game on YouTube for like a minute and a half. You'll get a minute and a half kind of overview video of a game from the developer or the publisher. But I don't see that very much, and
Yeah,
it is. You do have to dig and hunt real hard to find anything about games, about the game and what it's about and what's in the box, yep, I agree absolutely. My number 4 is rule books without the right picks or component lists, things like that. I think I've heard this from a number of YouTubers before, but if you're gonna, I go by the rule book. I don't watch many videos to learn how to play the game. After I feel pretty comfortable with it, by using the rule book, I will go maybe watch one of the videos just to see if I'm on the right track. I may have missed something because I don't always get it all. I've read a few million rule books in my time, and if you're gonna set up the game, that's what I will do. I'll set it up, open the first page, take all the pieces out, take a look, match up, make sure everything's there, and then I'll look for like a setup picture so you can kind of see where everything goes. And I've found so many where they try to kind of save space on the rule book by not putting some stuff in there. And I'll find great big pictures of other things that really don't need to be there, but there's no picture of how it's set up. And sometimes the description is missing to the component, and you can find it in the picture. It's maddening. You're trying to utilize the rule book in order to learn how to play the game, but you can't tell. You got to go watch videos, which is fine, but I'd rather do it by the book myself. I enjoy taking it step by step, and it helps me take it through the progression of the game. It just makes it, it's just the way that I learn, and it's a lot easier for me. So that's my number 4.
Yeah, I definitely watch videos from when I'm learning a game, but I would definitely agree that if there's an issue with that in a game where it's from a company that is used to making games, and the designer, the people they have working, they should know, like, there should be a standard as to like how things are laid out and what's included and how clear things are. I think it's kind of inconsistent too, because you play a game that it's beautifully done in the rule book. You know, it's completely clear, but then either the same person that made the game or someone who's equivalent makes a game that, like, out of character, it just is convoluted in trying to read the book. You have to keep jumping around pages, and like you said, like the images are not clear to what you're looking for. So that's very annoying when, I mean, they're a company, they know what they're doing. Like, what?
There was one that stands out.
Tons of games,
and I can't remember. Was it Endeavor, like Age of Sails or something? There was one game that we bought. That it was beautiful. The cards are beautiful. The box was great and everything. You couldn't learn the game by the book. You just couldn't.
The deck builder.
Yes, it was. I think it was.
It starts with an F, I think.
Oh, Foretold.
Foretold.
That's the one. Foretold. So I go online. The videos, they all say the same thing. You can't learn from the book. You got to do it like this. And then I looked on like Board Game Geek and a few forums. They all said the same thing. You can't learn by the book. So that's maddening, because I was really excited about that.
They did all that work to make the game. It's not like some no-name game. Like they had a lot of time and effort, a lot of components. I mean, it was a big game, and you can't get the rule book right. I mean, how hard is that?
And I've run into that more than once, and I have a lot of war games, and war games that I've run into have been like that. You get these great components, but then you can't learn how to play the game. So there's a little offset to it, because if I have a game that I can't figure out because of that situation, or I don't like the way that they did it, I'd like it better like this, I feel free to go ahead and change it myself, make it as much fun as I like. So it's not a total loss, but it gets a little frustrating. But that I agree. My number 3 goes back to rule books again. It's rule books that were clearly not proofread. There will be.
I think that you did your number. I don't think I did mine.
Oh, you didn't do your number 4? You started.
Yeah, I was talking on yours.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's right.
Yeah.
You were talking on mine.
So it's my number 3.
Yeah. Well, go ahead. Never mind. You didn't hear that.
When gamers do not like the randomness of dice in non-dice games, yet the games they play have randomness of dice and things like hits, damage, things like that. So non-dice games, because anything like a roll and write or anything like that, where you expect there to be a lot of randomness, and that's kind of the getting a high score. You don't know what you're gonna get. You expect that in a small game, but they have an issue. One example that actually made me think of this is this actually came up from one particular game, the Fallout board game. With the Fallout board game, I was watching a lot of videos to learn about it, and a lot of the reviewers, they liked how thematic it was, the component quality, a lot of the gameplay mechanics. They liked the storytelling. They liked how it felt like you were playing the Fallout video game. But at the end of the day, they couldn't get over the fact that the combat is simple dice rolling, where the little dice that have like the symbols from the VAT system in the video game, where you hit the different parts of the body. Yet they play games where they You know, they have the big setup, you know, the miniatures and everything, and then they roll dice to see if they hit something.
right.
You know, it's just like it's just very inconsistent and doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And also also with that game, this is actually kind of like a one I didn't put on the list, but another thing that annoys me, side tangent, also in the Fallout game, is that a lot of people griped about how you could you play through the game and have a lot of fun for 2 hours, but then some of the victory point cards the influence cards that kind of drive you to winning the game can, depending on how you've built your character, if they come up, someone could just happen to have built their character in such a way that it's easy for them to get it. So you kind of could luckily stumble into a couple points that might be, no one else has access to because you're already so close. So they feel like they played better in the 2 hours, or they did a better job, built a better character, but they got second place instead of first because one card happened to be lucky off the top of the deck. But like for me, like playing that game for 2 hours, if you're really enjoying it and you enjoyed the whole thing and you happen to not win, like to me it's like the journey, not the destination. For a lot of that stuff, it doesn't really matter to me if I win or lose. So it's just kind of annoying to me that would be so much of a deterrent to play it for some of the people I watch the videos from, when you have an amazing game experience for 2 hours and then you happen to lose by a point, and so all of a sudden, well, that's not a good taste. It's like, I don't know, that just bothers me.
Well, you're not going to get any argument from me. I'm the non-alpha gamer, so.
Yeah.
All right, my number 3 is going to be a bit of a surprise. Tell me if you've heard this before. Rule books that were clearly not proofread. Like I said, I've read through a bazillion rule books in my 45 plus years of playing games, and there are components that aren't listed. There's no mention of them in the rule book. There are total rules that are missing. You don't know how to interpret anything or how to move correctly through these places because they're not even described. And situations will come up. I've even read one rule book one time where when they show your turns, it'll say everything you can do in the turn, and I forget what the turn piece was. I don't think it was actions or movements, but there was something you could do in the turn where it was never mentioned again in the rule book. So you usually will see the things you do in your turn are take a card, and then they'll say take a card, this is what you do, and then you can discard a card, and this is what you can do. They will lay it out. This one, it wasn't even in there anywhere, and there were pieces that were involved with it. It was a real mess, and it was from a bigger company. It was really surprised me. But when you get a rule book and you want someone to learn by it, you don't have to have everything exactly right and maybe something misspelled. But that really is inexcusable with the technology we have, and especially if you're a big developer. But the rule book has to make sense, and it's got to be able to tell you how to play the game, and everything's got to be included. You can't forget anything, because it goes back to the bit with pictures of the components and the list and everything. You're learning this and you see it in the component list, but then you've got these ambiguous markings on the cards. You can't tell which ones are which. I think Foretold was like that. I think they had 8 or 10 different ways of. There were icons and stuff that I couldn't figure out what they meant because they weren't even in the book. And you have to have that stuff in there, or else nobody's going to be able to learn how to play your game. And it's too bad, because some of them look really good, and they look like a lot of fun, but just through the window. That's my number 3.
My number 2, needing a house rule to fix something that should have been caught or fixed in playtesting. I definitely have a decent number of games that I feel like it's a really good game, besides like one aspect that just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. One game that made me think of this was Arboretum. It's a card game where you're collecting sets and building out like paths of cards that have different values, and they have different suits, and you're trying to connect the suits in ascending order. And it's really a cool puzzly game as you're playing through it, but at the end of the game, you only score for the suits that you have the majority of value for left in your hand. So you have to like, I don't know, it's very awkward to like hold these cards back when you're trying to build up points. And I've definitely watched people play it on YouTube, and they'll have a really nice, they've done the puzzle part of it well throughout the game, but they score like one suit because they even try to hold cards back to score the other suits, but someone beat them by like 1 point. So all the work they put into 2/3 of the game is negated by the fact that they held back 6 points instead of 7, and it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So the one house rule that I usually use when I play it is to just score all the suits, and it takes away from a little bit of the strategy, but it's a little more laid back, and it makes a lot more sense, and you get higher scores. And I don't know, and that's just one example, but there's a lot of games where you play it and it's like, there's a neat concept here, and it's a cool game, but there's this one thing that just makes it really strange. It doesn't play very well because of that one thing, but if you just tweak it ever so slightly, it can make a bunch of difference. And it just feels like if you play test it, how do you not see that is just not a good fit for the game?
Oh, I definitely agree. My number 2 is parts that don't fit back in the box. That's exactly what you were saying earlier.
Yeah.
I did one today. I bought a game came in the mail, and after I punched everything, when you opened the box, everything was perfectly stacked, and there was a stack about that thick of the cardboard cutouts or punch outs and stuff. Punched very nicely, which I do appreciate. I like. That's actually one of the things I like about gaming is when you get a box and you're able to punch them out, and it actually punch out nice and clean, doesn't rip to pieces. Everything was perfect in this game except the fact that when you got them all out, the minute I saw it, I knew it wasn't going to fit, because that's exactly what happens when you have a bunch of stuff to punch out and it's perfectly flat when you open the box. And sure enough, it didn't fit exactly flat, no matter how you stacked it. And there was no insert, so it's not like you could. I do that sometimes. I'll hide things under the insert if you get a raised spot or something, and that helps make it fit. But that drives me nuts more than anything else, because it's a beautiful game, but the box could have been just a tad bit bigger. And I think you mentioned that in one of yours as well, is the boxes that are not made for the game. Yeah, you got to make the box that fits the game. They don't have to be all the same. It helps, but you can reposition them and do things. People are very creative. They're not going to suffer too much from that. But that's definitely my number 2.
Yeah, and I think if you get the insert right, it fixes the not fitting back in the box. Because if the insert correctly organizes and fits the pieces, then you can close the box. So number 1, the cost of dice, or any game that feels overpriced versus the components in the game. So the cost of dice specifically is what I thought of, but then I really thought, well, there's other games that don't have dice that it has, something like Splendor. A lot of times Splendor is like $40, or at least it had been for a long time, but all you get is like 80 cards and some poker chips.
Yeah.
So I just don't get it. It costs way less to make than this $20 game over here. So why is it $40? Like, the price should just reflect the production of it. The cost to manufacture it. But dice specifically is what I thought of, because there have been some games. Sagrada is one I wanted for a while, but I wasn't going to pay like $40. Of course, this was back when it first came out, and for a while, and I get that it was popular, but even a while after it came out, it felt like I couldn't find it for under $40 or $35. But the game just comes with a few cardboard things, a few cards, and a bunch of dice. Now, it comes with a lot of dice, but dice are so inexpensive to make, and they're just 6-sided dice. I mean, I just don't get why. And if you buy like a little pack of dice, you get like 4 dice or 5 dice or 6 dice, and you're paying like $14, or $8 or $9. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense to me. They're just little pieces of plastic.
I love it when they do that with just straight D6s. Like you'll have a game that will just have 6-sided dice, random, just 1 through 6, to the white, black pips, nothing special. And then you can buy replacement dice, or you can buy another set of these this game specific dice for like another player, so they can have their own, and they're like $14. You can get them at the Dollar Tree for like five no, for $1, obviously, 5 dice for $1. So instead of getting 5 of your dice for 14, and they look exactly the same, it is as ridiculous. It's like you're paying for the name.
Yeah, and I get it. I mean, the dice that come with, like, again, I pick on Sagrada. I get that the dice are not, they're not just like crappy little, they are high quality. I believe in that game they are translucent too. So they're nice, and they come with a lot of them, but the rest of the components of the game have to only cost like $3 to make. So you're paying $37 for dice, and that's not the only game though. There's definitely games. We'll look at like a lot of roll and writes. You're paying $20 for a pad of paper and 6 dice.
Yep.
It just doesn't make any sense. It probably costs them like 70 cents to make that game, and I get you have to make money, but I just feel like every game that has dice, you feel it in the price tag, and it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me because it's just plastic.
Yep, I agree. My number 1, I know you probably not going to be surprised, you may not have thought of it, but it's a trend that's going on now that it's highly annoying to me, because I have games that I played that I can play right now that are 70 years old or more. I have very old games. I have quite a collection of them, and I can play them now 70 years later. Oh. Games with apps that are required to play the game that makes no sense to me. I backed a game on Kickstarter that it came with a digital version of the game that you could get on the iTunes store, and it was only available for about 6 months or a year, and then they didn't have the rights anymore, so it took it off. I couldn't play it anymore. You're going to lose a lot of these electronic things, and I don't even look at the game. I don't mind if it's a scoreboard, or like with the Escape, they used to have an app that would play the
timer,
the music and the timer and stuff like that. I don't mind that, but there are games like I can't think of what. I think Mysterium is one. There are ones that have an app. There was one the other day.
That detective game.
Yes.
That just came out.
Yeah, that one.
Can't remember the name of it.
And I've seen games that I thought looked pretty good, and I thought, oh, maybe I'll get that game. And then I looked more into it, and I realized that you have to download this app. It's like, nope.
Yeah.
Gone.
That's too bad too, because I would like to play some of those games like that. I can't remember the name, but the new game that's out that a lot of people are talking about. It's a detective game where you can use an app to like scan clues and stuff.
Yeah.
I think it'd be a lot of fun, but I'm the same way. Like, even if I could play it a bunch and have fun with it, if it's a game you'd want to play for years, you're probably not going to be able to.
Yeah, I know a lot of people, they don't play them that long, but I do. I play games, of course, that I've had for 20, 30, 40 years too. It's just the way I do it, and I do the same thing electronically. I'll play games on my PlayStation 1 already. I still play the old Tomb Raiders, things like that are 30 years old or 25 years old. I will still play those old games. I don't totally abandon the past. There are a lot of them that I would like to play again and again, and then maybe 5 years later I'll play them again. And this goes, in spades with my board games. I will play Choir is my favorite game, and I have a copy from way back in the early 60s, and I play that thing constantly, and I will continue to play it until my dying days. And if I had to have an app with it, I wouldn't have been able to play that for decades. So that is my number 1.
Yeah, and I see myself, like, if we had like a game group where you could split the cost of a game like that and then play the crap out of it for a few months and just trade it in. I mean, I could see situations like that. Maybe, if you're just gonna like basically, use it for a while, then give it up and not intend on keeping it, but at least you can get the fun out of it, and everybody pays like $10, chips in on it, so there's not a whole lot of investment, but you all get to play it a bunch. But I don't have a game group to play games with, so a game like that where you want like 4 people, 5 people to play the game, it's just not for me.
I don't even mind if it's like the exit games. It's kind of the same thing to do with the legacy type games.
Yeah.
I'm not going to pay $60 for a legacy game that you really only get to play once. I know you get like 15, 16 plays, but like I said, I am not the type of gamer that will just play my game so many times and then I'm probably never going to play it again. I have games that I've played hundreds and hundreds of times, and I have a lot of those games. I will do that and I'll play a game for the whole weekend. I really play my games. I buy games that I like to play, and I will play the games that I have. And if I'm going to get a legacy game, I will buy like the Exit game. It's like $8 or something like that, $10. Same thing. If you have a game where the app,
It's like cost of going to see a movie.
yeah, if you're gonna buy a game and it's like $10, and it's got an app that's required to play, okay, it's kind of a rental.
Yeah, right.
I don't mind trying that.
Right.
I can even find, because I've done this myself with other things, I don't mind even kind of making it my own way, that I can make up some cards to be able to replicate what it does with the app, and so that when the app does go away, I still don't have, or you don't have an internet connection. There's a lot of people that still don't have very good internet connections to be able to tune in. I still get to play the game, so
Yep.
if there's a way around it. But generally, no, I'm not a fan of that at all. That's a trend that I'm not partaking in. But I guess that's it.
That's it.
Well, let us know if you agree or disagree down in the comments, and